Time's running out to avoid a shutdown of Canada's national railways. With just 2 days to go, many businesses are bracing for the worst. The union, which represents about 9,300 people, says workers are ready to walk off the job on Thursday. CN Rail and Canadian Pacific Kansas City say they'll lock workers out at the same time. Both sides accuse the other of bad faith bargaining. Federal Labour Minister says he met with all sides today and that he'll do the same again tomorrow. Now, the city of Grande Prairie in Alberta is one of the communities that would be most affected by a rail stoppage. It is the largest commercial hub north of Alberta and only uses Canadian National Railway. We now turn to the city's mayor, Jackie Clayton, to get a sense of what that strike's going to mean for her community. Mayor Clayton, it's good to speak with you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So how concerned are you about what might happen on Thursday?
Well, it's very concerning. Our entire economy relies on rail. Canada relies on rail. It was built by the railroad. And when any industry is impacted, we're going to see prices rise up. We're going to see a stoppage of industry and production. It's extremely concerning, not only in Northern Alberta, but across Canada.
So when you say Grande Prairie relies on rail, and I believe Grande Prairie is served only by CN, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So what do you mean by, like, how much do you rely on? For what do you rely on the railway?
So we rely on rail right now as prime agricultural season. So the export of agricultural goods, lumber, as well as the importing of sand for oil and gas for energy. All of our exports go through rail. There is still some trucking, but primarily rail would be what we're most dependent on. When the businesses can't export their goods and when people can't import what they need in order to use for production, there will be industries that need to lay off people. Communities suffer significantly if they cannot receive goods and export the goods.
Right, so layoffs, I hadn't even actually kind of thought to that point, because what I'm imagining here is that if there's a stoppage, a strike, there's no railway, then what happens to all of those goods that need to be exported? Where would they go?
Well, depending on the goods, with agricultural products, some of them can be stored for short term. But if you think of being a regional hub for Northern Alberta, there's goods that are brought in from rail. We've already heard of goods not being brought in. We know that in the short term, this needs to be fixed, and cooperation and good faith in negotiations is extremely important. And I think that at the end of the day, with the government not deeming rail essential, when we know how essential it is to the movement of goods, there's also significant reputational risk for our country. We've already had rail issues, transportation concerns, port strikes previously, and anytime the users and the purchasers of our exports hear of these reputational concerns, it impacts the entire country.
Are you hearing from your constituents about how concerned they are?
100%. This is ill-fortunate timing with the peak of agricultural season. Forestry is a significant factor in our region, and obviously oil and gas as well. So there's extreme concerns in Northern Alberta. 22 organizations started a group called the Community Rail Advocacy Alliance, and with that, we've been advocating for the disparity of rail service for probably over a year now. This is a group that involves communities and organizations and economic development agencies to talk with, in particular, CN, because we're served by CN, about the disparities that we hear from organizations. On a regular basis, we meet with industry to find efficiencies in rail delivery, and also to meet with CN in order to be that catalyst between the two, between industry and between rail delivery.
Mayor Clayton, I've been to Grande Prairie, and when you're there, I mean, it feels like a fairly sizable, it is a fairly sizable city, and it's like a bit of a hub, I think is fair to describe it, in Northern Alberta. And I'm trying to imagine, could trucks not be brought in? Is there not a way around rail at this point, or is rail just, I mean, it just has to be so crucial?
Absolutely. So our region, our city in this region serves over 300,000 people. We're the gateway to the north. We're also the gateway to northeastern British Columbia. And absolutely, trucks would be an option. The reality is that there's already a significant labor shortage in truck drivers, and to take all of those commodities and put them on trucks is not realistic. It wouldn't happen in a timely manner. There's just too much. The magnitude of the goods that are moved in northern Alberta is far too large to all of a sudden pivot to transportation. If you think of the magnitude of lumber alone, and if you look of all of a sudden trying to transition that to trucks, there simply isn't enough trucks. There isn't enough truck drivers. It wouldn't happen in a timely manner. And if you think about the goods not getting across Canada, it's only going to drive up prices and create shortages in things such as lumber for building houses, etc. So when you could say, yeah, sure, move to trucks, but it's not realistic. It won't happen in a timely manner. And there's just simply not, there's too much volume to be moved on the roads, on the highways.
The points you're making, that's going to drive it home for so many people in communities across the country. It's certainly not just yours that would be affected. Yours might feel it first. Do you feel like, I mean, we're hearing from the federal ministers that they're engaged with both sides of this today. They're going to talk both sides tomorrow. Is that enough? Are you hopeful that those conversations might go well at this point?
I'm optimistic that, there needs to be cooperation and faith in good faith negotiations. However, the other part of it is once this is done, the federal government needs to recognize the fact that rail is essential. Rail is essential to Canada for the exportation of goods, for the importation and movement of goods across Canada, and any stoppage is going to have a significant impact to many municipalities and many communities across Canada, in particular ones that are served by rail so direly.
Jackie Clayton, Mayor of Grande Prairie, good to speak with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.